Welcome to the Geek Podcast, where the rest is the best, too. I'm Void, I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
Oh, I'm the rest.
Today we're talking about the best of the rest. We're almost at the end of the year. This is like it. Actually, you might be listening to this after the new year. Either way, it's the end of our season. The new year is about to kick off, or has just kicked off, one way or another. But we always do our favorite games of the year, best games of the year episode, and then we do best of everything else, and we kind of lump it all in together. So that's today.
Yeah, so when we do the countdown, I shouldn't even say countdown, when we do the lists of things that we've compiled as the best of the rest, it's not in any particular genre or medium or anything. It is just everything else. When we say best of the rest, it is either video games or stuff.
Yeah, so everything else is in here. There's movies, there's TV, There's podcasts, books, there's, events that we've gone to have made it in the past, things like that. It's like anything else. Mine this year is kind of mostly movies and TV for my top 5, which was surprising for me. I know you and I were talking about, we both kind of wished that we had more books this year, which was interesting. But yeah, let's get into it and see how it goes. So, as a reminder, these are always based on like what we did this year, so it's not necessarily things that came out this year, even though for the most part it generally is stuff that came out during this year. But it's based on kind of like the first time we experienced something. If it was this year, it can count towards this one.
Right.
And like I know one of the ones on my top 5 was actually something that came out last year after we had recorded this episode. It was like right after that is when I saw it, so it kind of made the list for me this year instead.
And that one, I know which one you're talking about because I was thinking about this. That one in particular, and we're going to do this very vaguely for you guys for a while. That one made my list last year, but because it was such a big presence this year as well, it made my honorable mentions.
Wow, cool. Okay, so let's get into it. What do you have for your honorable mentions?
So the first one that on my honorable mentions, I divided mine into movies and books and podcasts and TV and such. And in the movies, it was Brittany Runs a Marathon. I really connected with this movie, that it was something that I was really surprised by. I didn't expect the level of care that was taken with it in terms of the way that they handled like weight shaming and personal body image stuff. It really got a lot of feels, and it got them right. So I really wanted to put that on my honorable mentions. Avengers Endgame didn't make my top 5, mainly because of the absurd quality that some of the other stuff I saw this year had. And the same goes for Into the Spider-Verse. It came out last year. It made my end of year list that year, I believe, and then this year it came out on Blu-ray, and it just made such an impact, and the Blu-ray is just so beautiful, and the movie itself is so good. The main reason it didn't make my top 5 of the year is because I already talked about it last year, but it was still good enough to get an honorable mention this year. It's that good.
For sure.
So that was really the movies I had. I didn't actually watch many movies that really stood out to me this year.
Yeah, I mean, my honorable mention movies, I always do movies and TV shows and kind of videos all together mashed up. So I had Crazy Rich Asians. I like that one a lot, but not quite a lot, or not enough to make it onto my top 5, but I definitely enjoyed that movie.
So good. That was almost an honorable mention on mine, but I actually saw it on yours, and I was like, I loved it, but I haven't thought about it in a while, so...
Yeah, but it was definitely good enough to get honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man Far From Home is on here. I liked it. I liked it for what it did, but it wasn't like I don't know, mind-blowing or like awe-inspiring for me. It was just like a really, really good Spider-Man movie. And, didn't quite make the top 5, but is definitely in there. And then my other 2 in this category are Fleabag and The Boys. So 2 Amazon originals that are shows, not movies. But The Boys, I know we talked about that a bunch, just like a totally different take on superheroes. And I love how it twisted the genre around and did new things with it. Like, it's so rare to see new things with superheroes these days. And then Fleabag was this slice of life. It's just 2 seasons, and every episode is fairly short. They're like 20 minutes, and it was so compelling. I watched the whole thing in like 2 nights, and I'm still thinking about it, right? It's not quite to the level of like, oh my God, it's like the top of my year, but it's definitely way up there.
And that's one where I see those on your list, and I'm like, thank you, and you're welcome, because I got you to watch Fleabag, and you got me to watch The Boys. So Fleabag is absolutely, if I remember, I'll actually just scroll up. Fleabag is Yeah, it's on my list of honorable mentions as well. Like, it is so good. Jennifer got me to watch it. It breaks the fourth wall so much and so well. There is not another TV show that I can compare it to, but it is incredibly vulgar. But it's not, I mean, it's gratuitously vulgar, but it serves a purpose within the narrative. So it's not something you watch with your kids, but it's absolutely something that I can recommend, but not compare to anything else out there for y'all.
Yeah, and then you had a bunch of other TV stuff too, right?
I did. I had tons of TV this year. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend ended. It was it's one of my probably top 3 TV shows ever. The way that it handles mental health, just the characters, pretty much everything about the production of it. I'm still listening to the soundtrack from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I was listening to it today while I worked, actually. I pulled up a couple of videos that I like. I've run to songs from it while I'm running. When I was having a really bad depression day, like really, really, really bad, I made myself get up and go out and run, and I probably listened to the song Diagnosis 5 or 6 times that day while I ran, because it's this upbeat, inspiring thing about about getting a diagnosis and being on your way to getting better and knowing that there's some way to finally fix some of these problems and symptoms. So it's just a magnificently uplifting show, so well written. Kim's Convenience was awesome. Did not think I was going to like it nearly as much, but apparently I really love Canadian sitcoms. Grace and Frankie is one of the best TV shows that Netflix has made, in my opinion. I know Austin and his wife had watched it and thought it was for old people, but I completely disagree. I think that just because it's about old people doesn't mean that it is for old people. It's about aging, and I can't remember if you watched it or not. Did you?
Yeah, I watched the first couple seasons. I liked it, but I just need to get back around to it. But it's definitely not a show for old people. It's a show for anybody.
Yeah, it just deals with the things that happen as you age. And I loved these characters. Jennifer and I just fell in love with this show. So we watched it all the way through, then got sad because there are no more seasons right now. And there's one last season, I believe, coming out soon. And then I talked about Fleabag. Like I said, it was on mine. And then just night before last, we finished the new season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Have you seen it yet?
Not the newest. I think I only saw the first season, but I liked it a lot.
Oh, okay. I thought you had watched the second as well. I thought you had gone back and watched it.
I might have. I don't remember how many there are, but I've definitely watched 1 and maybe 2 seasons, and I liked what I watched.
Yeah, and it's great. Like, you got me to watch this as well. I think you and Jennifer combined got me to watch this one. It is so good, and Rachel Brosnahan is marvelous as Mrs. Maisel. See what I did there? And it's like, this new season is very, very good. They've really hit a stride on this one. So it's just such a good series, and it's been renewed for a season 4 as well. So I can't wait. But it does end on a cliffhanger. Kind of. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger. So I can't wait for season 4 to come out already, and I finished it 2 days ago.
Sweet. So that's kind of like between the two of us, movies, TVs, shows, that kind of stuff. We both have podcasts, which is interesting because you don't always have a podcast in yours at all. So you better talk about yours first.
I don't actually have a whole lot to say because I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I started listening to The Adventure Zone this year, I shouldn't say despite, because of a lot of prodding from you and a lot of our listeners. I didn't finish the first arc. I'm working on, I finished the first arc maybe I don't remember where I'm at and how they divided it up where I'm at, but it's such a good storytelling show. I love it. I love the people who do it. I just haven't sat down and gone back to finish up where I was, mainly because I've been listening to audiobooks and music a lot more while I run, and honestly just haven't put back the Adventure Zone into my rotation, but it is every bit as good as y'all were making it out to be. So thank y'all for letting me know about that.
Yeah, well, meanwhile, I'm on my 10th re-listen to it right now, so yes, it's good. I'll enjoy it. For podcasts for me this year, I always try a lot. Not a ton of them really stuck this year for long enough to make the list for me, but I had a couple. So Strong Songs, I know I've talked about, and it's this in-depth dive into an individual song and kind of breaking down the constituent parts and talking about what makes the song what it is and what's different about it, what's unique, what techniques are people using, and like kind of isolating the different pieces and then seeing how they all come together. And it's just, it reminded me how much I loved music, and it actually like has me considering picking up a musical instrument if I can ever find the time, which is something I've kind of thought about off and on over the years, but this podcast specifically is making me like really give it another thought. So I have to call it out for that. And then the other one is 13 Minutes to the Moon. This is one of those like limited run podcasts where it's not ongoing. It's a limited amount of episodes, but the episodes that are there are fantastic. So it's this in-depth look at the moon landing process. And it dives into all of the different things that went into the moon landing and some stuff around the time and like all the different teams that worked on all the different things. And one of the coolest things that comes out of it, you know, after all these interviews, after all of this talking and analysis and like learning about it, is that by the end of the podcast, there's a bonus episode right at the end. And it's basically just the 13 minutes of radio chatter as they're landing on the moon. And if you have listened to all of the episodes up to there, you can just sit down and listen to those 13 minutes and know exactly what is happening at every step along the way and what they're talking about. And it's one of those things where like you've heard this NASA chatter so many times because it's super famous, those 13 minutes to the moon. I never knew what like any of it meant except for the very obvious stuff. And now I know all of the things that are going on, and it blows me away. So I have to call out 13 Minutes to the Moon. It was fantastic.
That would be really awesome. I know you've talked about it before. I didn't realize the very last episode was like that 13 minutes of radio chatter. That would be so interesting to listen to, especially with the commentary, or not the commentary, the context from the rest of the show, like you said.
Yeah, and it's only like 10-ish episodes all in. Maybe it's like 10 or 15, but it's not a super long-running podcast. So like you can work through it and then be done with it. You know, it's almost like an extended audiobook.
That's awesome. Like that's really cool that it's not that long. I was running in a kind of a tangent that's related kind of to that. I was running the Rocket City half marathon, half the Rocket City marathon this past weekend, and they have a race app that lets people track you live. So Jennifer was tracking me and everything, and it gave me audio notifications every mile, telling me my splits, things like that. But as I'm running through this the NASA Space and Rocket Center beside the like Saturn V rocket, all of a sudden my music goes down really low, and I just hear Neil Armstrong say, you know, it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And he I was like, what in the world is going on? Why do I hear that in my headphones? And then I realized it was that tracking app that I hear that sound as I'm running by a Saturn V rocket and then underneath a space shuttle in just a few minutes. Like, it was so well put together that hearing about the radio chatter reminded me of that, just coming in and cutting in and hearing some of that dialogue.
Yeah, so it's really cool. 13 Minutes to the Moon, highly, highly recommended. And then books for the year. You and I were talking about this. We don't have like a ton of books, which is surprising because you and I usually read a decent amount and find some good stuff. But like, I looked back, I read slightly less than normal, but not extremely less than normal. It's just that like the stuff I was reading didn't end up becoming mind-blowing or amazing or super fantastic. It was just like, it was good, right? But it was a lot of good, but not great. It's kind of where I landed with books for the year.
That's generally how I've been as well. I have some that I thought were worth mentioning, but didn't quite make the anywhere near the top of my list. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson.
That one's on mine
Super
too.
Good.
Yep.
So good. Book 2 was apparently out, and I bought it. I'd pre-ordered it and didn't realize it, so I'm looking forward to reading that once I finish the Lightbringer Book 5, The Burning White, which is probably the best book I've read this year. I'm not finished with it, but Brent Weeks is finishing out this series amazingly. It is unbelievably good, and the way that everything is coming together, there's a lot of little things that I may not remember from the other 4 books because they've been so spread out from reading them as they come out, but the way that he ties the world back in together, it explains everything without it being expository. So I really appreciate that, and it's just well written. And I think that you should read this very soon. It's just a very long. It's like 1,000 pages long. So it's an investment of your time, which is why I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah, it's like literally the next book on my list to read. So
awesome.
It's there.
I can't wait to hear what you think about it because of some of the stuff that they've done with he's done with the structure of the book as well as what's going on in the story too. So I look forward to that. I still think you'll finish it before me because I only read at night before I go to bed. I wanted to give an honorable mention to Aftermath Life Debt by Chuck Wendig, the second in the Aftermath trilogy of Star Wars books. Empire's End is good, but I haven't finished it yet. Life Debt was excellent, and I really thought they did good things with Chewie and Han's relationship in it, so I really appreciated that. And then The Consuming Fire by John Scalzi, the second in the Interdependency books. It is so good. That is one of the best series that may have ever read, and by the time it finishes, it probably will be just as good as any other like space opera epic sci-fi thing that's out there, maybe better. It's just crazy good.
Yeah, I've either read all of those books you just said or I've read parts of the series. So yes, those are all solid. I mean, Skyward is on mine, right? Like that's an honorable mention for me this year. Skyward was good, but not quite at the level of the other things that did make my top 5. And then the only other book on here that I really liked was Every Tool's a Hammer. And, that's the one with Adam Savage, and he dives into what it means to be a maker and being creative and all of this stuff around it. And it kind of coalesces a lot of what he's talked about on podcasts, on shows, and other things in the past, but in a more structured format. So I really like that book. So if you are a maker or if you're a fan of any of the stuff that Adam Savage has ever done, either of those two camps, it's definitely a book that's worth picking up. Every Tool's a Hammer.
That does sound really neat. I don't think I would like it terribly much, but I think it sounds really neat.
Yeah, I don't think you're just not a fan of him the way that I am.
Yeah.
And then
exactly. It's a wonderful concept. Yeah.
And I enjoyed it a lot. Then the only other thing on the honorable mentions here for me is meditation apps. And this is one I thought about a lot because I feel like the two that I landed on are Insight and Headspace. And Insight Timer is explicitly what it is, but Insight and Headspace. And they're both really, really good. The reason that they didn't make my top 5 is not for the quality of the app. It's for my failure to integrate them into my life better. I feel like if I had done these regularly, if I was really making time to do this every day or even once a week, more religiously, it would have probably cracked my top 5 because I can see how much they help me, my mental headspace in a good way. And I've failed. I've failed to integrate them into my life, and I wish that I had done better.
That's the way I feel about 10% Happier. Jennifer and I were going through it, doing it nightly, and after about 3 weeks, we kind of stopped integrating it, and so I didn't even include it as an honorable mention on mine because I felt like a failure with it because I failed to integrate it like you did. So, but it's absolutely worth doing, y'all. Go back and listen to our episode on meditation and things like that and apps like that. It's totally cool.
Yeah, and I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but I definitely am going to make an effort to get back to these and try them some more. I'm not going to go all the way to saying I'm going to do it every single day because that's a recipe for failure because that's a big commitment. But just saying that I'm going to get back to them, I'm going to do more of it, and I'm going to try to find a way that's more sustainable to do it, instead of trying to make it a daily habit because it's just that didn't quite work for me. But there's some middle ground there that I feel like if I strike the right balance, it's probably a good thing.
That's about the way it is for me. I meditate, not guided, but I meditate a lot. It's just at different times and places during the day, like in the bathtub or while I'm at my desk or driving or something.
Yeah, so that's kind of our honorable mentions. We both have our top 5 list for best of the rest. Before we do that, this is always where we like to ask for reviews and remind you guys that Patreon exists. So reviews, that's a huge way you guys can help us. It's totally free on your part. Just take a minute now because I know that you won't remember at the end of the episode. I know you're not going to remember in a week. This is the only time when you're listening to this is really the only time that you would actually do it. And I know because I'm a podcast listener. I'm the same way. I don't blame you guys. So seriously, if you want to give us a holiday present, the best thing you can do do for us is like pause right now. Don't even pause. You can keep listening to us. I don't care. But go into your podcast app and give us a review. 5 stars would be appreciated. But, whatever you think, be honest. That's huge. That helps us a ton. And then Patreon. You want to tell them about how Patreon is actually like important? I know we talk about it every week, but, it actually helps a lot.
It does. It helps a great deal. Patreon covers costs that we have for working on the podcast and the website, web hosting, podcast hosting, domain names, all of that kind of stuff. The nitty gritty back end kind of stuff. That's where the money from Patreon goes. So it goes directly back into the podcast so that we can keep making it and keep putting out more and more content for you guys. So if you want to, you can go to patreon.com/geek2geekcast and check out the cool rewards that we've got for you, and just support us and show us that you love us by doing that, or go in and give it a review.
We appreciate it either way.
We really do.
Okay, before we get into our top 5, there may be a special guest spot. I always try to recruit my family for this time of year, so if there is one, it'll be right here.
Are you ready? Yes, she's nodding. Okay, this is my special guest for this particular episode. My children made the cut for the Games of the Year episode, and you made a special appearance right near the end of that one. But for this, you get your own segment. So my wife is here, your wife. Wait, how do you go? What do you go by? It always confuses me.
This is your wife.
Yes, thank you.
I'm here with your wife.
I am here with your wife, my wife. The most confusing thing. You have your own top 5 list, and we're going to run through it really quick. This is the best of the rest episode. So in the spirit of best of the rest, everything not video game related, what kind of list do you have for us today?
I bet you can't guess. It's plants.
I can guess because we're surrounded by them.
Well, I had to pull them all together to have them sitting in front of me so I can, so I can see them as we go through. I could do this without the plants around me, but, where's the fun in that?
Yeah, no, I understand. So you said you have a top 5 list, and I see about 9 plants here.
Well, I'm going to say that, yes, this one, I don't know if you want to count it as a plant. This is actually a tree.
It is. It's it's a tree. It's like at least as tall as a 5-year-old.
A mid-level 4-year-old. I wouldn't go all the way to 5.
Okay.
I mean,
agree to disagree.
50 percentile. It's about up to my waist, and I'm an average height person. And then this actually is just cuttings in water. They have roots and stuff, but there's not any soil in there. So is that a plant?
Yes, those are definitely plants. I'm looking at them. They are plants.
All right. So I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'll say 9. These are different kinds in the same cup.
Okay, well, you have a lot here.
Yep.
So let's dive in. You have honorable mentions first before you have a top 5.
I do. I have 2 honorable mentions. One is a Ficus teneki. That is the tree.
The literal tree sitting in the room with us.
Tree. Yep. You can have it in bush form. You can have it in tree form. I really like this one because it looks like a dinner plate sized camouflage leaf. And the outsides are a nice ivory cream color, and the stems are pink. There's just a lot going on there, and the care is really simple, and it's a Ficus elastica, which means it's a rubber plant, and the leaves are really succulent and thick, and I really like feeling them.
Okay, but just an honorable mention for the literal tree sitting next to us. What else do you have in here for honorable mention?
My other honorable mention is a Tradescantia bunny bellies. That's a little vining plant with purple stems and green leaves, and it just grows. It just goes so quickly. But the thing that I like most, it's called bunny bellies because it is so soft.
It feels like a bunny's belly.
It does.
It does. I enjoy touching that plant in particular.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Is that it for honorable mentions?
Yep, those are the 2 I brought.
Oh, okay. So what are the other 7 for your top 5 that are sitting here? Number 5.
We'll start with number 5, which is a tie between 2.
Okay.
I'll take your comments off the air. The philodendron scandens and the epipremnum neon, or the neon pothos. So when you get started in plants, you start with either a heartleaf philodendron or some kind of easygoing pothos, and people kind of get contentious over which one is better. They're absolutely the same. It's the same. It's different plants, but they're so similar, and they both have all these different colors and all these different kinds and everything. I started as a pothos person, and I started with my second plant that I ever bought was a neon pothos. I love it. I still have it. It's beautiful. But when I got my first heartleaf philodendron, it's just a green heartleaf vining plant. This one, it's I just love it. I love it so much. And they have subtle differences here and there, but they're really, really similar. So I'm going to have to go ahead and tie those, I think, because this just looks like it belongs in my life forever. But the neon pothos has a special place in my heart.
And those are good starter plants.
Those are really good starter plants, I think.
Okay, so if someone's listening for starter plants, give the names again for those ones.
That is a neon pothos, really any pothos.
Neon pothos.
Yeah. Or this is a philodendron scandens.
Okay, got
The
it.
green one.
Number 4.
Number 4, we're
They're
going to...
just for reference, they're literally all green. I'm looking at all of them for the whole list.
I'm sorry. Is this green?
Yes.
Is that green?
Yes.
Those are not, oh my gosh, those are not, there's so many different shades of green and the subtleties and the variegations.
I agree. They're literally all green. Okay, number 4.
Okay, I can literally have all green plants and the textures are all different on every single one of these plants. Each has a unique texture.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. Number 4.
Okay, we're going to stay in the philodendron vein and tangentially go to a philodendron micans. It is exactly the same as a philodendron scandens, which we just covered, except the leaves are slightly darker green. They are red on the back. New growth comes in dark red or pink and then fades to green, and the texture is velvety. It feels soft. It's not fuzzy like the bunny bellies, but it's still a thin leaf that's just really, really soft. And I really like touching this one. Care, again, is super, super easy, just like the other vining philodendrons.
Okay, nice. Number 3.
Number 3. Okay, so number 4 and number 3 were really, really close, but I'm going to give number 3 to the green Maranta variegated. So green Maranta, or a green prayer plant, also comes in a lot of different colors, and I have a couple different ones, but this one is just really striking to me. It looks like it just has brush strokes of yellow ivory on each leaf, and it's so easy. I just put it in the bathroom and it stays there and it grows. I water it sometimes and it's just never given me any grief. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and give that one the number 3 spot.
Sweet. That's not the fainting one, right?
No, that's not the fainting one. We are doing the curly one and then the fainty one.
Okay, got it. So number 2 is the curly one.
Number 2 is, okay, so there's a little bit of, it can be hard to actually learn the name of this plant because it goes by so many different names. The actual name is a Scindapsus pictus. So some people call this the satin pothos. It looks like a pothos. It acts like a pothos. See this plant right here?
They can't see it.
No, I'm talking to you. Okay. Yeah. So this plant has like the same shaped leaves as this one. So the leaves look exactly the same, and so it's really easy to see that you would mistake this for some kind of pothos. But the thing that I really like about the Scindapsus pictus, it's, again, a vining plant. The leaves are green with silver speckles all over it, so it's kind of like a jaguar or a Dalmatian kind of pattern, and the silver is sparkly in the light. Plus, the texture overall with these leaves is like a suede, which I can't get over. I know the Micans has like a velvety texture, but it's still a really thin leaf. And this one's just, it's a nice, solid, suede-like leaf. It's really nice. Like I can't stop. Each leaf.
She's still touching it. She keeps touching it.
Is that leaf the same? Yeah, all of them. All of them feel the same. They're beautiful. And
Okay.
it vines. I guess I'm really into the vining plants. And the care is really easy. It can take a lot of different kinds of light, and when it needs water, the leaves curl up. It's super simple. When it's curly, give it a drink, and the next day it pops right back up. That's great.
Okay. And then, so what's your plant of the year, number 1?
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, we're looking around at all of these like green vines, and I'm kind of like, here's my whole thing, and I love texture, and I love obviously green vining plants, and my number one is actually like a stand-up plant. It does not vine at all. It is the, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this name? Isn't it
the Selby? That's what you call it.
It's the Selby, but it's the Homolomina Selby. The Homolomina Selby. So it's a cousin of the Chinese evergreen, and I bet if you've been in any doctor office or dentist's office or anything, you've seen a Chinese evergreen. It is an office plant. Like every office has either a peace lily or some kind of Chinese evergreen, and this is its cousin. So it's really similar in growth pattern and all that. It just kind of like, it's like a bush almost, comes up like a fan. And these leaves are suede, just like the Scindapsus pictus, so I think I'm getting kind of into a favorite there. I like the suede leaves, and this one still, they look like they've just been brushed. The middle line on the leaf is this super dark green, and then the rest of it has this lime green brush strokes on it with little specks of the dark green throughout the leaves, and they grow really fast. The outside of the leaves, when they first come in, are like a dark red, like you can see that leaf coming in right there, like it looks like it's going to be red. It'll open up and be green. And then the care, again, super simple. I keep it in highlight or low light or bathroom or downstairs or wherever, and when it needs water, it literally faints. It falls down.
That's my favorite thing about this plant.
Yeah.
It faints for you when it's like, hey, I need water because like I'm dying. Like it's not actually dying, it's just a drama queen.
Yeah, we call these the diva plants, and I have a couple of them that will faint when they need water, and it's great because I don't have to like check it ever. You just wait for it to look like it's dead, and then give it a little drink, and plus it'll drink tap water, which some of my plants get distilled water. They only get distilled water or rainwater in the summer because they need it.
Yeah, that's
for their leaves.
That's a rabbit hole. So, plant of the year, Selby.
Plant of the year, Homolomina Selby.
Perfect. Yeah, it looks like you have some viney stuff, some suede stuff, things that are nice to touch, lots of greens, some textures, and then a fainting plant.
And
I like it.
Yeah, I could absolutely recommend all of these to beginner plant owners.
So if you pick one, let's leave people with one thing. If they're going to actually go out and look for their very first plant, what's the one?
I think everybody could get something from the Scindapsus, this guy.
Scindapsus.
The Scindapsus pictus. Yep. It's green, it vines, it grows really fast, it can take a lot of different kinds of light, it curls up when it needs water, easy there, and it's sparkly and it's suedey. I can't get enough.
Perfect.
Like literally, I can't get enough. I think I have 5 of them.
And we're back, hopefully, from a special segment. I think so. Best of the rest, top 5, right? Top 5 of 2019. So again, just one last time before we dive into this, these are things that came out this year as of when we're recording this. So that means that there's one thing on my list that's definitely from last year. And then also the other thing we have to call out because we know it's going to come up. Rise of Skywalker has not released yet as of us recording this. So it's not eligible for our list this year, but it will be next year. And there will probably be a podcast episode about it sometime in the next month because I don't see how there wouldn't be.
Right. Unless it is a complete and total monstrosity, I think that we would. And I say that complete and total monstrosity because we didn't do one over Solo. And I like Solo a lot, but neither of us were in a space to do a whole episode on it. So hopefully Rise of Skywalker does not hit that level of us being about it.
And I mean, it comes out like right during our break from the podcast for the year, like the one true break we take. So we'll see. But either way, it's not eligible for this year. So that's why it's not on either of our lists. Okay, let's get into it. What's your number 5?
My number 5 this year is actually Spider-Man Far From Home. I thought a lot about it. I thought about how much I enjoyed it and Endgame and Into the Spider-Verse and just everything that Marvel did this year. And Spider-Man Far From Home ended up being my number 5 because of how it wrapped almost everything up that Endgame didn't. It was one that I've enjoyed watching more often than I did Endgame because Endgame is so intense. I've enjoyed going back and just watching Peter Parker and Mary Jane and all of the, or MJ and all of the other characters interact. And you know, I just love Spider-Man. And so I think that they've wrapped up phase 4 really, really well. Or was that phase 3? I never can remember. Which one was it?
Yes, it was the phase that ended. It was phase 3, I think.
That was phase 3 that ended. We're going into phase 4. Okay. I liked the way that they wrapped up phase 3. I liked how they were really moving forward with something different. And I don't know, I just really, really liked that movie. And it would have been replaced by Into the Spider-Verse, but it came out last year, and I talked about it last year on my best of, so I was like, that's not fair because the Blu-ray came out this year, but it's so good. But Far From Home, I absolutely adore it, so I had to put it on number 5.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that movie a lot. Like I said, it was in my honorable mentions. I enjoyed it, just not quite enough to make my top 5, but I totally see why it's there for you. My number 5 is The Imagineering Story, and
oh yeah,
I've loved this. Like, and part of it, I talked to other people about it. I convinced some people to try it, and not everybody loves it. And so for some people, it's just a documentary, and that's fine because it's like the history of Disneyland. It's the history of Disney World. It's Disney theme parks, right? And a couple other things that are also done by the Imagineers, like Disney cruises and stuff like that. But it's mostly Disney theme parks, and that part is fascinating to me, and that part's interesting. But the reason it's on my top 5 is probably twofold. One is that I used to go to Disney World a lot as a kid because my grandparents lived in Florida for part of the year. They were snowbirds. That's what we have in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
People have, when you retire, usually you keep some kind of house in Minnesota and then you go somewhere else for part of the year when it's really cold here. So my grandparents had a house in Florida and we were down there a lot. So I have a lot of memories of Disney World that are really positive memories. And then the other part of it here is that I've been a creative professional literally my entire career. Since the time I was 15, like I have been doing creative work of one kind or another. And seeing how they build the things they build and approach the projects that they approach is just, it's so completely fascinating to me as a creative professional because I do projects not to the scale that they're doing, but it's also not that dissimilar to a lot of the things that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. Like, hey, here's a huge initiative that takes a bunch of creative power, but also you have to figure out how to execute it at the end of the day. Go do that. Like, that is my job a lot of the time. So seeing how that works at the Disney level and especially at like a theme park level, which is a little bit outside of what, I do, it's just so fascinating to me. I loved it. So yeah, The Imagineering Story, number 5, I highly, highly recommend it.
It's so good. Like I've only seen the first episode of it. I've seen half of the second one, but I fell asleep. Because it's very good. Like I was just bonked, and so I didn't get to finish it. It wasn't boring, but I love it. And so it amazes me when you said that you've heard people be like, it's just a documentary, where I find it magical. Like I'm looking at it from a different perspective as you are because I haven't worked on that kind of project and put everything together like that. But I'm seeing it from the Disney fan perspective, the person who loves the history of this just company and loves that kind of thing in general. And so it feels really magical to me to watch that. I can't imagine it not affecting other people that way. And in one of the episodes, it's either episode 2 or 3, Katie from Tea Time's sister is in it. Did you know that? Did you see her talk
That's
about
really
that?
Cool. Yeah.
So it's not as a talking head or anything, so y'all don't have to pay attention to that, but just know that there's a little Easter egg for those who can find her.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is actually the John Wick series. I came very, 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 very late to these. Everyone told me how wonderful they were, and this year I discovered how great they are. John Wick 3 came out in the theater, and people were talking about how wonderful it was and how much they were enjoying going and seeing it. And I was like, man, I can't go see that. I haven't seen the other ones. So Jennifer and I went to I don't think we went and rented. I don't think we got it at Redbox. We rented the first one and we watched it, and I adored it. Like, I'm not usually a fan of mindless violence and action, but this one is so stylized that, and it's not necessarily mindless. It serves the narrative. Again, just it's done so well that they've created this weird world where the assassins have their own currency that makes no sense whatsoever. culture and like just this underworld that they have that is self-contained and within that's hidden from the rest of the world. Like, I just love the way that they've done this series. It's pretty. They've done great things with the colors. The colors are saturated and really, really, really pop. It's just the choreography is great. And Keanu Reeves really has always been one of my favorite action stars. That since I was 16 and saw him in The Matrix, I've been a really big Keanu Reeves fan. So it's not something like his resurgence has done. It's like, no, I've always been a Neo fanboy. So I'm really, really glad that he's in those movies, and they're so good. Like, I really love them. Jennifer cannot, however, stay awake during them because it's not that she doesn't like them or is bored by them. She just curls up and has fallen asleep in the middle of every single one of the three.
Okay. I need to get around to them. I do want to watch them at some point.
They are really, really good, and it's surprising to me how good they are based on what they are. I expected it to be something kind of like something ridiculous like Crank or I can't remember the one with Clive Owen in it, Shoot 'Em Up. I thought it was going to be something like that, and it's not. It's really, really well done, and there's actual characterization to it, and it's super good. I can't wait for you to see them, and I want to know what you think about them then. I didn't know you hadn't seen them, given that you had played the turn-based strategy game.
Yeah, no, not yet, but I'm glad that you found a series that you like so much. That's awesome.
I did.
Yeah.
Cannot wait for the next one.
For me, number 4 is Restaurant to Another World. So it's an anime. I'm surprised that an anime ever cracked my top 5, but here we are. It did this year. And this is one where I had kind of put out the call. Like, I can't remember if I was sick at home or if I had a couple days off, or there was something, I don't remember, but I was just like, hey, give me every single anime recommendation that I can find on any streaming platform anywhere, and I will give it a shot at least for a couple minutes. And I got a list of like 70-ish or something from our community. It was crazy. I tried every single one. Yeah, there were so many. I tried every single one, and there were a couple that I watched a few episodes into. This is the only one that I watched all the way to the end, and it was amazing. It's probably my favorite anime ever. It's such a weird premise. There's a restaurant in this world, and I can't remember if it's Saturday or Sunday, one of the weekend days, the shop closes down because the door, instead of opening out to our world like it does most of the week, it opens out into all of these magical realms, and the door just kind of magically moves around between different worlds and universes and stuff. And all of these people come in, and they have different dishes that they like. And so it's this like different character portraits through the food they eat, but then you get the backstory about the characters, and they kind of flash back into their life or they talk about it. And every episode is really 2 episodes. So even though it's only a half an hour, it's really like 2 15-minute shorts about that character and about the stories around them. And they slowly build up the mythology over the course of the season as you get to recognize the characters. And, oh yeah, I saw them in another episode, or, oh, I've seen them in the background for a bunch of episodes, and here they are having their own, and by the end of it, I was just like, I want more, and there wasn't more, and I was very disappointed. So strange that an anime cracked the top 5 for me, but Restaurant to Another World is definitely my number 4.
Are they going to make more of this one, or is it done?
I have no idea. I don't keep up on anime enough to know. I think I looked it up, and there weren't any plans to make a second season when I finished it, but that was probably 6 months ago at this point.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember. I knew that I knew it was one or the other, and I couldn't remember which it was. Like, yes, something's coming, or no, this is it. So I just didn't remember which side of the coin it had fallen on.
Yep. So that was really good. You have number 3. What's your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 this time is actually Captain Marvel. It is so good. I have gone back and watched it, and it is one of those movies that every single time I've gone back and watched Captain Marvel this year, I've liked it better. So I had to include it, and I actually included it higher than Spider-Man Far From Home because of that particular aspect of it, that every time I watch Spider-Man Far From Home, it's been, yeah, that's really good. And every time I watch Captain Marvel, I see something else in it that I like, that makes me like it more. I really, really just like the performance, the story. I like how they have I just like how they characterized Captain Marvel. I like Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, and it really did make me a Captain Marvel fan, that when I see her in other media, like in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 or Marvel Strike Force or whatever it is, it makes me want to play as her because of how much I liked her in that movie. And so it did make me look at Endgame a little bit differently because of how much I like it, because the Endgame stuff was shot well before the Captain Marvel movie was, so they hadn't finished everything out. And so just with Captain Marvel itself, I've seen how much it means to people. Like, it's weird. Like, I've seen a lot of people talk, and I've known a lot of people here in town locally who I've talked to, that Captain Marvel, seeing the way that it was handled, and then again in Endgame, that it meant a lot to them to have Captain Marvel as a title character, and so I like that. My nephew has just like gone all in on Captain Marvel. He loves Goose, but like he loves her as well. So it's interesting for me. I wanted to include it as number 3 on this one for that as well, because he's 9 years old and very much in that phase of, I don't like princesses. I do not like Disney princess movies. You want to go see Frozen 2? Why do you want to go see Frozen 2, Uncle BJ? And I was like, because it's awesome. But Captain Marvel is probably his favorite Marvel movie at this point, and it's just one of those that I just think, because of stuff like that, it's just done so well that it had to be my number 3.
Sweet. Yeah, that's one of those movies that, like, the reason it didn't even make an honorable mention for me is nothing to do with the quality of the movie. It's that it failed to stick in my head. Like, I saw it was really good. It was really, really good. And I know how important it is as a movie and as part of the franchise and how much it meant to other people. And it completely slipped my mind when I was putting this list together. Like, I don't know why that one failed to stick in my head. Maybe it's the time of year that it came out, and it just, I don't know. Something about it, like, I wish that I had thought about it more, right? A lot of the things that end up on my end of the year list are things that, after I finish them, I spend a lot of time thinking about them, whether or not I actually rewatch them, replay them, reread them, or whatever. But they take up a lot of headspace for me. And Captain Marvel, it was amazing in the moment. And then, like, within a week, I don't think I thought about it again. So that's kind of where I landed on that one. But I'm glad that you liked it so much, because it was really good. I don't have any doubt about that in my head.
Oh, yeah. And it's something that I don't doubt that it hit like that, because it was a very strange release date for it, because it was released before Endgame, and then just immediately again before Spider-Man Far From Home came out. So it was a bam, bam, bam Marvel time, and Captain Marvel was like the first of that. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed, that superhero fatigue that we had talked about and done an episode on, where there's just so much. I don't doubt it. No matter how good it is, if there's so much of it, you can't pay attention to it all and keep it all in your brainy parts.
Yeah, and I mean, so my next one is also Marvel. My number 3 is Into the Spider-Verse, and this is the one that it came out last year, and if I had seen it last year, it would have been on my last year list, but I didn't see it until after we recorded this episode last year, and then I saw it over kind of the break that we take, and it was just, it's amazing, and we've talked about it a lot, so I'm not going to dwell on it here, but the art and the cinematography and the style of it, plus the story and the characters and just everything that they did with this movie, it's probably one of the best superhero movies ever made, and I love it. So that's probably all I'll say, because I know that we've talked about it so much this year. But yeah, Into the Spider-Verse is my number 3.
Yeah, it's just super good, and it's something that I know that I didn't say it for when I was talking about it on my list, but if you are even remotely interested in animation and animative styles, I don't even know how to say that, but the techniques of animation, the styles, you need to watch this movie and then go look at behind the scenes stuff. How they have handled the technology is astonishing, and the visuals it's going to be one of those movies that I go and look at in 10 years and it's still going to look just as good because of how stylized it is, rather than them doing different kinds of CGI and things like that, just trying to make the world. It's just the techniques are so good. Like, they've done so many cool things.
Yeah, the visuals are just like nothing you've ever seen. So yeah, it's incredible. It's such a good movie.
It is.
So number 2, you and I both have the same number 2. So
we do.
It's surprising. That doesn't happen very often. But It's The Mandalorian for both of us.
Yes.
And
I figured it was going to be on both of our lists.
Me too.
I actually thought it might be the number one on both of our lists, but as I was putting mine together and thinking about the rest of this year, my number one actually did push it down because I had it listed at number one.
Okay, so I had this listed at number one for a couple weeks here, and then I moved it within the last week as I was finalizing this list too. So I think you and I are kind of in sync on this one, which is interesting. And for me, the reason that I didn't make this number one is because the quality of the show has kind of, it's not that it's bad, but the first 3 episodes were just like amazing and groundbreaking. And then the next 3 episodes, because we're 6 episodes in as of when we're recording this episode, the next 3 episodes were okay. Like they were good, they were solid, but they didn't quite hit the same tone and the same like bar of quality as the first 3 in my mind. And it's not that, you know, it kind of starts to go towards Monster of the Week format, even though it's not monsters, it's like Bounty of the Week format. And that's not bad. It's just a choice that they made. Really, the reason that it's so high on my list, though, and the reason that I almost made it number one, if it was number one, it would have been this. It's because of what it means for Star Wars as a franchise. And the fact that Star Wars can now open up again and not just be these tentpole movies. They've been so protective of the IP ever since Disney got it, and it feels like we're finally getting to the point where things open up, right? We talked about Jedi Fallen Order. That's part of it. Like, hey, there's actually good canon stories now, and they're able to make single-player games again. That's a huge stride forward. I think this is the other huge stride forward. Live-action TV, it's made for, I mean, you know, it's for like PG-13, so it's like adults, you know, it's not just kids, but it's teenagers and above. But it's just what this means for the future of Star Wars. Like, I really hope the future of Star Wars is a lot of live-action TV if this is what we get. Because I want to see Star Wars get weird. I want to see it get different. I want to explore things that don't relate to any of the things that we've seen before. And that's just why it's so good for me.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day because you had talked about how you don't know if you can go back and watch any more of the kid shows that with Rebels and Resistance and Clone Wars and the stuff that they've done previous to The Mandalorian. And I was thinking about that because this show has been every bit as high quality in terms of production and narrative style and everything that the movies have been. At least I think so. Like the set design, the characters, the
production quality,
the special
without
effects,
a doubt,
the production
right?
quality,
the production
they've
quality.
all hit that level. And as long as they can maintain that, I don't see the animated series being able to seem as important. And I know that's silly because as much as I love the animated series, I love animation, it doesn't seem as though they'll be able to tell nearly as compelling stories after seeing what they can do with this world. And I loved all of the episodes a little bit more each time. I don't think that it actually fell off in quality or interestingness than when it first started. But this last episode, I don't even remember the name of the chapter version of it. It may have been chapter 6. But it was the only one that I felt was weaker because they hit some characters and had some acting choices that I thought were terribly obnoxious. And I don't know why they made some choices they did. I know why they made those choices with like the Twi'lek character. I understand why they made that choice, but it was the wrong choice in my opinion, and it brought the entire quality of the episode down. Other than that, I really liked the episode. Like I really liked Bill Burr's character in the episode, the mercenary with the gun on his back with the robo arm. Like I really, really liked him. I think his name was Mayfeld or something like that. Like I loved that episode in parts, but I thought that they had made some weird choices finally on it that I can't wait to see where the rest of the season goes, whether or not she is I was looking at a text message, whether or not the show keeps like tying things together or keeping up with the Bounty of the Week stuff.
Right. But like you said, if they keep the production qualities and it's kind of that prestige level of TV, it's going to be, that's what I want, right? I want more Star Wars in that vein. Like I'm all here for it. So that's why Mandalorian is number 2 for both of us.
Yep.
What do you have for number 1?
So my number 1 this year is actually an event that I went to. I honestly don't remember what month it was, but we went to see Renee Elise Goldsberry in concert with the Nashville Symphony. It was the most magnificent performance I've ever seen. If y'all don't know who Renee Elise Goldsberry is, she played Angelica in the original cast of Hamilton on Broadway. She plays Quell Christ Falconer in Altered Carbon. So if you've seen that, she plays Quell. But regardless, she is the single most talented performer I've ever seen in my life. I have never been more riveted. I've never seen someone who is that entertaining to watch. Like, it's the quality of the show. The music was great. The symphony was fine. The symphony was great. That's what the band does. But the people that she had, but her voice and her presence, just everything is inexplicable. Like, I can't even tell y'all how it felt to be in there, because when she started singing, it was just a whole different level of any concert or any performance I have ever seen. I can totally understand why people who saw the original cast of Hamilton on Broadway were completely knocked down by it, because they're all that quality. And hearing her sing Satisfied and Schuyler Sisters, and just on top of everything else that she sang, she was Nala on Broadway in The Lion King, and so she sang Shadowlands. It's just everything that she did was just about perfect, actually. I don't get moved by music very often, but that was probably one of the best experiences of my life, like just in terms of going and doing something. So there's no way it could not have been number one. If she is on tour anywhere near you, I highly suggest that you go see her. And if she comes on tour again near us, we're going to go see her again. She is just magnificent. It's, man, so good.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad that you found someone that you like that much. And like you said, if it moved you and normally that type of thing doesn't, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and that's really what it was. It's like you think back and it's like, man, that was so good. And where it's just one of those, like, those moments you cannot recreate in any shape, form, or fashion. It was a unique one-time experience, which is what's so great about theater and live performances in general, and concerts like that. It can never be replicated, and it just kind of sits there as being this shining moment of the year. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, for me, I'm much more stereotypical. Last year, it was Hamilton, right? It was kind of like you. It was like moving, and it was like incredible. This year, my number one is Avengers Endgame. And I gotta talk about why a little bit, because some people are going to have this on their like whatever of the year list, and they're going to talk about Endgame. I know lots and lots of people are going to do this. I think for most people, it's going to be, this is an amazing movie. It's my favorite movie ever. That's not me. I like this movie. It's a good movie. It's a really good movie. It's super strong. But the reason that it's my number one is because of the filmmaking feat of making this. They stuck the landing. And it is insane to me that this movie got made. And it's the end of like 21 other movies, and they all wrapped into this one. They all wrapped into it.
Yep.
Like, absolutely everything ended up fitting into this movie. That has never been done before, and I doubt that it's ever going to happen ever again with any other series, except that Marvel might do it again, right? But the fact that this happened, and it's the first time it's ever happened, and it might never happen like this again, it makes this movie such an accomplishment. And I think because of that, it's the most impressive movie that has ever been made. It's not my favorite movie. It's not the best movie, but it is the most impressive movie that has ever been made, probably ever. And that's why I had to give it my number one. It's just, I know what goes into making a film or a video or even a 30-second ad, right? Like, I come from that world. I did video production and film production for years, and it's amazing that any video or film ever actually gets finished, because making anything is insanely difficult. They made 21 movies. They kept the tone consistent enough in the same world, and they built this world as they were like figuring it out, like as they were going. They didn't have the whole plan up front. And while they did that, they were working towards this movie, and they managed to make it all that way and stick the landing, and they did what they wanted to do. They did what they set out to accomplish. I'm blown away by that, right? It's like the filmmaking side of it, the production side of it, the producing side of it, and directing, and just the planning aspect of it. Like, that is why it is my number one. It's also a good movie. Like, okay, you know, we could talk about that, but that's not what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about the fact that it even exists is incredible to me.
Yeah, and there was a point where I was going through the list and trying to rank everything and thinking about it, where my number one was very momentarily the MCU, because we watched all of the MCU movies this year. That we took that time, and I think you did too. Did you this year, or was that last year, where you rewatched all of them?
Yep.
Where we went through all of them, and it didn't burn me out like I expected it to. I was very ready to be done watching superhero movies, but don't get me wrong, but it was an experience where it was, this is all super good. They did such a good job on connecting all of this stuff that it is an experience when you do it, and it is a feat of engineering to be able to do it. We were watching a documentary on not the documentary technically, it was the movies that made us. It's like the toys that made us, but about movies. And we were watching the one on Home Alone, and it really does hone in on that. It's amazing that any movie ever gets made because of all of the moving parts that are fighting each other. And that movie got shut down and brought back in again. And so yeah, it is crazy that these movies did what they set out to do. It is amazing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it was really, really good. Like I said, I love what it was able to accomplish, and the fact that it exists is just astounding to me. And it's also a really solid movie. It's also a really good movie, but it's the filmmaking, it's the planning, it's the producing, all of that went into it. That's why it's my number one for the year.
Right. And yeah. I totally understand that, respect it, and was right there with you.
Yeah.
I just labeled it differently when I did it.
So that's it for this season of the Geek to Geek podcast. We'll be back next week, hopefully uninterrupted. Usually we come back with a bunch of geekery because we have taken like a 2.5, almost 3 week break at that point. It's our only real break for the year. So
it will be season 5.
It will, which is insane.
That is nuts that we will be starting season 5, that we have put out well over probably over, at this point I haven't counted, are we over 200 episodes yet?
Yeah, we must be somewhere in that range. Yeah, there's a lot of podcasts.
It's a lot of podcasts. We have 200. This is episode 200. 200 is exactly what we have on iTunes right now. As of episode 49, it was 200. Neither of us realized that, but we're going into season 5 and have done this weekly for over 200 episodes. That's insane. And we couldn't have done it without y'all.
Yes.
Well, y'all listeners, you keep us doing this.
We love the community that's built up, and the other people on the network, and the other things that we've added to the network. And even though things have come and gone and switched in and out, it's just so cool to have this community and to have this kind of network of creators that has organically been building out, right? None of us are doing this for money or really making any money off of it. This is just like a passion project because we want geeks to connect with other geeks in positive ways. And you guys have been what has made it. Like, that's why we do this. So with all that being said, that's probably it for this week, and we'll see you next week. You guys can write to us, and suggestions, feedback, comments, all of that stuff. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussions on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
We also have great discussions on Slack and Discord. You can go to geek2geekmedia.com for invite links, and while you're there, you can check out all the other content on the network.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and you can listen to me even more on the Dragon Quest FM podcast.
You've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geeks.